Thank you so much for joining Understanding MCP, what legal teams need to know. Unfortunately, Ellie cannot join us today. So I'm going to be doing the presentation. If you have questions and I cannot answer them, we will take it back. I'm recording this. We'll have the transcript. We'll use AI to pull out all the questions. And then Ellie and myself, we will answer it. And she also has a couple other videos that she will be sharing tomorrow. So there's going to be some more MCP materials. She's been using it more than I have. I've taught myself very recently. So I appreciate you joining and we will go through this. Oops, hold on. Like I said, sorry, I'm in a hotel room, so not my usual setup. There we go. So again, we're talking about MCP, and so what is that? That is Model Context Protocol, and we will be talking about what that means, and the implications, and then how you can actually use it for legal work. So the ground rules for this are please ask questions, please interrupt, or you can also use the chat. There are no silly questions. Again, if I can't answer the question, I will find out an answer and get back to you. And please also share your experiences. If you've been using MCP, it's really great if we can all share and grow and learn together. All of this is so new, and it's changing all the time. So it's a collective effort here. And I'm trying to also, I'm going to put the chat down, oops, for a second. But so now we will move. What does model context protocol mean? So it was actually it's a standardized protocol that was developed by Anthropic to help tools talk to AI. So this is from Anthropic's example. So what it is here is we've got AI applications. So for example, they of course use Claude, but we say we have a chat interface, our AI here, which is most likely what we're going to be using. ChatGPT, Claude, then connects through MCP here to data, documents, file systems, right? Google, Notion. It can also go to development tools like GitHub or productivity tools like Slack, Gmail, Calendar. So really, they even describe it as the USB-C between AI and other types of applications. So it really is a connector between these. And again, they wanted to standardize it so then we can all sort of have the same protocol and have it talk to one another to make it easier. So just um, I always forget to introduce myself, so that's why that slide is here, but that is briefly an overview, and we will get more into why that is. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm a California licensed attorney. I've spent 12 of the last 15 years in-house, so I consider myself an in-house attorney first and foremost, and I've been teaching AI since 2023. And as I mentioned earlier, for other people who have just joined us, Ellie cannot join us today. She is our legal ops legal engineer who is absolutely amazing. So I will be trying to fill her shoes for this. But again, please ask questions. So what will we have by the end of today is hopefully you will understand what MCP is. And I'm moving things out of the way and how it works, just very briefly, or at an overview, very high level, not super deep. Why it matters for legal and compliance, and then how you can enable it in real workflows. And the cool thing is, I was actually just playing around with Zapier earlier, and we'll talk about it. But now Zapier has AI in beta, so you can actually have your AI window open within Zapier and then just tell Zapier what you want to do, and then Zapier will build out the steps for you. So it's like it's becoming very cool what we can do without knowing how to code. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited because it's a fun place to experiment and really allows us as lawyers to be able to create programs and to connect different software in ways that we definitely couldn't have, let's say even 3 to 4 years ago. So what will you get at the end of this? You will get the slide deck, the recording. We have an online prompting guide that we're also working on revamping. And of course, you're here at the Wordsmith Academy, where we will be putting up some more MCP videos tomorrow as well. So let's jump into what is MCP and how it works. So we had a brief overview, but again, it is an open standard developed by Anthropic that lets AI tools securely connect to external systems. So that just means software. So the simplest example is I have Wordsmith AI, I have Juro for my contracts, I use a model context protocol to connect the two. So now Wordsmith can go in and see the data, grab information about my contracts in Juro. So that's a very simple standard or simple example. And it's pulling the context in real time. So previously, if you upload a document, I'm sure we've all experienced this, right? You have all your documents and you save them, and then someone wants to change a term and then you got to go through all your policies and all your template agreements and change that. And if you've uploaded that document everywhere, you've got to like recreate the document and upload it. Here, it just pulls it in real time. So it's looking at the most up-to-date version and you don't have to do any uploading or, re-uploading. And it uses tools and actions that explore those systems. So again, I showed this earlier, but I saw some more people are joining. So basically we have our AI applications over here. Then we have this standardized protocol that talks to data or file systems, development tools, or productivity tools. And it's a bi-directional workflow. So they can talk back and forth to one another. Again, it's like the USB-C, right? We're allowing things to connect and talk to one another. So now I think it's important to know why it was created. So AI tools, as I'm sure you know, need context to work well. So a lot of organizations have data existing in various places. Like we've got, let's say we have Jira, we have Notion, we have uh, Google Drive, we have Box, we've got Salesforce, we've got, HubSpot. So we have all of this data and we need to get it into the AI so then we can actually start to work more efficiently. So prior to MCP, all of these integrations between like if you had to do an integration, let's say between Wordsmith and Notion, that would be custom coded for every single tool. So that means you need a developer to make all of these connections, and that's a lot of work and resources for companies. It's very slow, it's fragile, and then your company has to maintain that. So that is not a sustainable system, nor is it scalable. And there was no shared standard, so there was no shared governance. And I'm sure many of you know Anthropic is really trying to push governance and safe and responsible AI use. So that's why they developed this protocol. And it is, it should also make it a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's going to be easier, but from a substantive legal point, make it easier for legal and privacy teams to understand the data flows. So what does it solve? It creates one universal connection standard. It makes the AI to system communication predictable and easier. You know where data is flowing. It makes permissions and accessing easier to control. Everyone's using the same standards and they're not hacking together custom solutions. It then also makes audit logging easier to enforce. Again, this is coming from Anthropic's point of view where they want to be good citizens. And it really supports the interoperability across a whole bunch of tools with bi-directional data flows. So this was created by Claude to kind of like give an idea. So what does it do? It exposes three things to your AI tool, whether that's ChatGPT, Wordsmith, Claude. It's going to read your resources. So your files, your databases, metadata, and it's going to be able to enable you to search, to fetch, to look up, to schedule, to write or update records if that's allowed. And it's going to live in those tools, those servers. So you're going to have an MCP server, living with Ironclad or Notion or Google Calendar. Again, if you have Wordsmith and Juro, you're going to have the Juro MCP connection with Wordsmith. And so that is what it is doing. Now I'll pause there just to see if there are any questions at the moment. No. Well, thank you, Ellie. She did a very excellent job explaining. Now, I thought this was interesting because I know some of you here use Zapier. So is MCP like Zapier and how are they different? And I see something in the chat. So yes, perfect. This is exactly what we're going to talk about. um, so we are going to move forward. So for Zapier, it is a workflow. So I'll show an example of it if you haven't seen Zapier before on the next slide so you can visualize it. But you are automating predefined steps. So you have a trigger, like let's say you receive an email, then that triggers an action of maybe, if the email has certain words in it, it then sends the email to Slack or maybe puts it somewhere else. So you set up triggers and actions, and those can be as simple or as complicated as you want. There is no reasoning, so it's very deterministic. It's using language like if then or contains, excludes when you're setting up Zapier. So an example is, when you're setting up this workflow, when a contract is signed, that's the trigger. I'm going to send an email and I'm also going to update my Airtable. And you can set that up in Zapier. And so like, what does something like that look like? Right here, this is an example. So let's say my trigger is a new message is posted in a Slack channel. And then the next action is that Zapier is going to filter it. And that's where you can set up filter conditions. So you could say one of the examples, like if a new message is posted to the channel that includes the word legal or grievance or complaint, then Laura's going to get a message because we want to watch out for that. And then we're going to actually send that to Wordsmith. And then Wordsmith is going to summarize it. And then we're going to send it to Airtable to create a record. Then right, we can do all simple things like this or make it more complicated. And then with Zapier, you just have to log into your Slack, log into your Wordsmith account, log into your Airtable account, and then it will perform those actions in a very deterministic way. You are telling it exactly what to do. So this is actually so this is an example. This is Zapier where I was trying to get it to basically create a meeting assistant. And they have Copilot now. So if you haven't tried Zapier, you can try it free for 14 days and you can try Copilot and beta. And this is where you can just tell it in natural language what you want it to do. And then it will build out the workflow for you, which is pretty cool. So I was trying that out today and I got really excited. So I wanted to show you. This is the proposed system from Copilot where I was trying to have Gmail, Wordsmith, and my calendar connect. So I wanted it to, read my emails. And if the email contained the words schedule, meeting, or available, then I wanted it to respond back with, it would go into Wordsmith. Wordsmith would analyze it, and then it would generate a response email for me. So here I'm using Zapier and then the power of Wordsmith and AI to generate text to then send it back. So now MPC is not, it is workflows, but it's more about capabilities. So you're giving AI access to tools. So for example, I can give Wordsmith access to Juro, or I can give Wordsmith access to Ironclad, or I could give it access to my Google Calendar. I could give it access really to any tool that I use, monday.com. And then it's going to let the AI decide what to do in real time. So it's going to reason and make dynamic decisions. So you can control this with the custom instructions that you give it. So for an example would be find the renewal date for vendor X in Ironclad. So then it's going to go through and look in all of Ironclad and pull out that information for you. Now, in an example that we'll show later, you can be there every step of the way to have control over it, or you can just let it go and do whatever it needs to do. So you can set it up with the controls that you need in place that you feel are comfortable, that you feel comfortable with. So really to compare them, and this is all credit to Ellie and how she's thinking about this, is Zapier is workflows. Contract is signed, it sends an email, the Airtable is updated, right? It's just pulling the information from the contract, taking these actions. But with MCP, it's more capabilities. So you're allowing the AI to go into something else and perform some actions. Obviously, finding the renewal date is very simple. It can be much more complex than that, depending on what you're doing. And you don't have to use one or the other. So you can use both. And I'll talk about that later as well. So I'll also pause there to see if there are any questions and if that makes sense to everyone. Yes. Okay. Again, thank you to Ellie. Oops, wait, what happened there? We'll go back one. Oh, so this is the video where I was saying this is Copilot in Zapier. And so it's actually running and the um, building the workflow in the background. But now this is me showing you in order to access Wordsmith on Zapier, I needed to give the API key, and this is how you create an API key. So if you are using Zapier with Wordsmith, you go into settings to create the API key. It will create the API key, and then you could hook it up um, to Zapier. And I didn't show the whole video because I wasn't going to show the API key to everyone. But that's just if you're using Zapier, that was something that I ran across that I didn't know how to do and asked Ellie, and she told me. And just again, to reminder, because I don't know different people's level here, but an API is just a simple, secure way for systems to talk to one another. So again, that's with Zapier, where it's very deterministic. So MPC, we also want to talk about a little bit about legal and compliance, and then I will show, we'll get into some examples and how to kind of do some of these things step by step and how you could test it out as well. Because I believe that testing and experimenting is really important. So I asked our CTO, like, how can I try this out with Wordsmith and something else just as a test without having to um, get all the authorizations from my security. So we'll all go through that. So then you can maybe try to put some of this into practice. So first, from a substantive point of view, right, these are the, I think, four major areas that we need to consider when we're talking about MCP, when we're using it. I think it's fairly obvious, right? Data privacy, it's real-time access potentially to personal and sensitive data. So, what are you connecting? What is being connected? What type of data? You're going to have expanded access surface and permission complexity. So who's allowed to use these connections and what are they connecting it to and how are you controlling that? Then there's accountability and authority. So where can AI take actions and where do humans need to be involved? Obviously, then we also have some regulatory implications in there. And then we also need to start thinking about contract and vendor management. Are there new requirements now that we have this? What does that look like? So just briefly going over some of these and things to think about as you're using them before you jump right in. So, the data privacy risks is it's extremely easy to hook it up to calendars, to contract management systems, to vendor systems. So do you want to allow people to, let's say, hook up Wordsmith to their email or to their calendar? So it's reading and potentially writing to both of those. And then, who has access in both of those systems? There's, are you going to connect systems automatically? Do some people need to be prevented from seeing some of the data? Are you going through, your whole entire contract database? Do you have the confidential contract segmented in a way that then it won't be surfaced if you're connecting it? And you're aggregating information in new ways, right? If I'm just the Wordsmith to Juro, I think makes sense. We all know, contract management, Wordsmith is a legal AI tool. For letting Wordsmith go into Juro, we're going and looking and processing that information and aggravating it. It's been a long day, aggregating it, um, and presenting it in new ways. So have we thought about that? um you know Further, like, so what data can the AI now see? What does it have access to? Does it meet GDPR requirements? Do we need a DPIA for this? Do we need to update the records of processing? How is the data logged and who views the logs, right? All of these considerations that you have thought about, we now need to think about in a different context. So again, I think we really need to think about identity and access management and privilege permissions. And I've worked at companies where we haven't had any privilege permissions. We've implemented them. So those are things to think about. Revocation when an employee quits. We've had issues with that before, making sure you're revoking access, and audit logs. So again, these are similar to any other software, but it just is a little bit more complex because you've got to think through what's going on. So also importantly, who can create the MCP connection? Do you only want your IT team to do it, or do you want to let your legal team do it, or anyone? What can the AI read and write? So even I was on a call with a customer, and sort of the standard Google, which I'll show, came up to connect Wordsmith to their Google. And we said, he's like, okay, I'm fine with reading, but I don't want you to write. So thinking about that, do you want the AI just to read and access information, or do you want it to be able to contribute back to that information? And who approves changes? So this is what I was talking about, right? If I'm sure you've seen these before when you're connecting different systems, when you have these check boxes of what you're letting it do you just want it to see? Do you want it to edit, create, delete? Does it have all of those capabilities? And then you also need to think, right, about accountability and authority risks. What can it do autonomously? What requires human review? What happens if the AI takes the wrong action? So one of the reasons that fully autonomous agents haven't taken off yet, and it's something that we are experimenting with, is because they don't work, perfectly 100% of the time. So, I always like to use the example of AI is booking a trip for you and spending money for you. You want that to work 100% of the time. You don't want it to go off and, book a trip for you in a completely different country on the wrong dates and spend your money because it went down a wrong path. So sometimes, AI can go down a wrong path or take a wrong action. So what do you do with that? And then who is accountable for AI triggered outcomes? And then just consider contracting, right? Have you put in MCP or API usage rights, data flows and audibility, logging, liability for automated actions? We have sub-processor risks, and then updating and patching requirements for the MCP servers. So this is just like broadly things to think about from a legal perspective as we are using this. And so now let's jump into how MCP can enable workflows. And again, Ellie has provided us some information, and we will provide some more examples. But specifically with Wordsmith, so the MCP connection, you can connect it to Ironclad and retrieve contract and contract information. You can connect it to Notion, and you can pull clauses or playbooks, and Wordsmith also is directly connected into Notion. You can schedule meetings. You can update Jira or task systems like Jira or Confluence. You can sync with vendor or procurement tools, and you can work with internal databases. Or if you're using smaller tools, like for example, we don't use HubSpot, we use Attio. And so there are not a lot of integrations with Attio with other tools. So could we use, MCP connection to connect to it since we don't have other options? So now this is an example that I'm going to walk you through that Ellie has videoed, and then we can talk about it. So this is an MPC connection. So this is Ellie's assistant. We're in a workspace, which is like a custom GPT. We're going to the channels. down here, you hit configure or add a server. So she has added a bunch of servers here that you can see. She's going to look, but there are Jira. So here you can see she's added Google, she's added Jira. You can turn them on or off, and it does it piece by piece. So you can see, let me see if I pause that real quick. Yes, let me go back here just so you can see. Boop, no, stop. Hold on. All right. Okay, so here you can see when you're adding it, you go in and you're going into Jira, and then you're going to find an existing user, add an attachment as an issue, add a comment to an issue, create a link. So you're adding all of these different connection points for what you are doing here, and you can toggle them on or off. She will make a video that will release about walking you through how to do this, but this is the end result. And so we wanted to show you what it looks like on the back end. So now we are going back. This is her custom instructions. So you're an assistant. And so again, if we pause this right here, it's going to go and pull all the tickets assigned to Ellie or an Ellie's active sprint are in progress in Jira. And then it's going to summarize the ticket. And for each ticket, we want to show the key or title, the status, the priority, a bunch of this information. And then we're going to apply a traffic light prioritization. So we're going into Jira, we're going through, we're getting a bunch of information. Wordsmith is then processing it and is going to show her what her priorities are based on a variety of factors, including scheduled meetings. So I'll let this traffic light, and I see the questions here. I'll go over there first before I get into this. No, this is Wordsmith, which is very similar to ChatGPT in custom GPTs. Thanks for jumping in there, Jay. And so I'm going to go for a second. So what? Stop. I need to get, so here it's saying, here are the 3 sections we want, and then it's defining what each of the sections are. So red, there's a couple of criteria, and the ticket is blocked, and Ellie is the unblocker. Amber, due next if any of these are true. It's due within 7 days based on a due date or SLA. Priority is high. It unblocks multiple other tickets. And then green is anything that is not red or amber. And then this is how I want you to respond. So it's taking in a bunch of information and prioritizing her tickets for her. And then it's also scheduling. So we've got calendar and meeting scheduling rules. So it says when to schedule a meeting. So like here, if we come here, in this workspace, if Ellie says anything like schedule a meeting, set up a time with X, book a call, find a time, invite them, or asks you to arrange a meeting implicitly where we're relying on the advanced, I don't want to say reasoning, but the advanced pattern recognition of A to do this, then you must do the following. And then steps, we're putting out the steps, check Ellie's calendar for availability. And then offer them 3 good options, then create the invite. So again, we've connected all of these different pieces together, and we're taking them through step by step with these custom instructions in our workspace. On the next slide, I do have all of the custom instructions. They're rather long, but I want to give people the custom instructions so you can go back through this and read it afterwards to see how she did it. And of course, you can always use AI to create your custom instructions and make them better. I do that. And so we can go back and look at that in a second. And so now she's going to show us how this works. So she just said go. And now what it's going to do, it's going to prioritize what she needs to do based on her Jira board. So it's running, and you can see it's calling the Jira software. So all of those data that we pulled in before that we saw, it's pulling it in. And so it's saying you have 1 red priority because it matches the company rule and it involves a booking call on Tuesday. It's in progress. You have a contract review that started, and then here's some green things that you need to do. And then she could go through and then ask it also in the same workspace to then schedule meetings for her. Perhaps if she's looking at this, she could go in and then book a dentist appointment. Um, yes, I'm just looking at the comments there. So does anyone, I know this is we're going through it kind of quick, and it is obviously Ellie's assistant. But are there any questions on this at this point?
I think just I had one. Presumably, you could
Yeah.
trigger this from say Zapier itself by calling the relevant assistant space or workspace.
Could you like,
So you typed in go there.
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
if I wanted to have it run, say, on a schedule or on an event, could I call the workspace that's also connected to the MCP parts to trigger that flow, and it will still go away and deal with that tool calling part?
That is a good question because you can use right, you can use both Zapier and MPC together.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
full disclosure, massive fan of Wordsmith. We use it a lot here at our organization, and we haven't yet explored the MCP functionality, but we do use it quite heavily in Zapier workflows, and it works very well for that. And I'm just trying to think, sometimes I want something like this to run without me telling it to, for example.
That's a great question. So I will double check with Ellie because I haven't done this enough on the legal ops side to be able to answer that. But I think that is a really good question because, like you said, we already have a lot of people already have some connections. So I will get back to you, and we have your contact information. So thank you, Jay.
Question.
Um, Perfect. Any other questions? And I did not plant Jay here. Either. So this is awful, right? Like worst slide ever, but this is Ellie's assistant, her custom instructions. Again, I like to give this to people so you can see how she's broken it down. So you'll get the PDF of these and you can see what she has done. I think it probably would also be helpful. I will ask her to do the first part of the video. How did she choose what she was connecting in Jira and in Google because she had to connect her calendar and if she did she no yeah so it looks like I don't think she did her Gmail but just her calendar. um right, yeah, so we'll ask her to do that so then we can, okay, how do you actually set this up? Here are the custom instructions, but what are you connecting with the MPC connection, which you can see in the video. It's quite extensive, but I will get that information so you can see how what we connected then connects to the custom instructions.
Laura, I have a question.
Mhm.
So, how does this layer when it comes to agent builds?
That's a good question, and it it depends, like any good lawyer. I don't agent like the definition of agent varies based on the degree of autonomy. So I don't know if anyone would call this necessarily an agent because it's I guess it's sending out and getting information and bringing it back into the AI for the AI to process.
Yes,
Um,
it's more similar to Zapier for sure.
yes,
But I'm wondering how this plays into the ecosystem with agents and workflows and just thinking about the ecosystem of building out end-to-end workflows.
that is a great question for Ellie, but from what we've talked about, I think it would kind of be like Zapier, then MCP, then agents. Because you can have you can't have the AI like the workspace running on its own, pulling information from these different places. And our workspaces could, in some instances, depending on what you're doing, be considered an agent. But yeah, Jay, it'd be great to know what you think.
Yeah, I'd say, the MCP functionality is certainly orders of magnitude closer to agentic for me because you're giving it discretion over what it can do and the tools it can call. Whereas in the workflows that we currently have in Zapier, where we just put Wordsmith in as a step, we can do some clever things about choosing based on like certain categories or certain rules as to when it would call Wordsmith, but it is linear. It has to follow a path and it can't go back on itself. Whereas MCP will give it a chance to attempt something, and then if that condition isn't met or if something isn't there, then it will carry on thinking towards the end goal. And I think you move from having set branches into more fuzzy, open-ended patterns. And I think for me that's the difference. And MCP is kind of key to all of that because you can't, if it doesn't know what tools or features it has access to, can't make a decision about what they are. And you'll see that most MCP connectors, they're quite descriptive in the name. You'll see that they had underscores between them, like so it's the name of the platform and then the functionality. So it can kind of determine there. And even better MCP servers or ones, they'll have like descriptions so it can read it. And this is the bridge between, LLMs are obviously text generation and text ingestion. By doing that, it can ingest and understand like what it can do. Does it match with the goal I've been given and a capability I've been given permission to call? So, and yeah, you see they're quite descriptive in their form. But if it's okay to ask an extension question, Laura, like
Mhm.
one of the things that we were working with Wordsmith to do early on this year, before we had this capability and before we even had the Zapier integration, was workspaces being able to call themselves. Now, you talked about bidirectionality. Obviously, when we connect in MCP servers to go out to other systems, can the same thing be happen the other way, where we can call Wordsmith workspaces as on a separate MCP that or MCP server or within itself? I kind of love that idea that I could have a general workspace that then thinks about which other workspace I might go and call to answer the specific question. Because the way we set things up in our workspaces is we have quite a lot of sources, and I don't want to have to necessarily connect every single source to one workspace. We sort of compartmentalize by team, topic, area of law, activity. So that's just my question. If
And
that's
yeah, no, it makes sense. And I know we've talked about that before. I believe workspaces will be changing to repositories soon, and it will get more capabilities. So one of the things, because I've been almost with Wordsmith almost a year now, um, is we started out with very siloed tools. And now what you're seeing is the tools merging together and sort of those silos breaking down. So it's more workflows, and you don't necessarily need to know, I need a workspace or, to do different features. So I will get back to you on that question about the bi-directionality and having multiple workspaces. Um, but I know that that has been a question before and it has been discussed for the exact same reason that you said. I just don't know the exact answer, and it could be that we can do it. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be really awesome to have, and I think it plays into Mariette's part about agentic, like different tools calling it. 'Cause I think sometimes when you look at agent workflows, you kind of have like a team of different agents, sometimes to self-check each other, which I think is quite powerful when you can mix them together. And
Yeah, Jay, that's what I was talking about, like the build on the agents, because based on kind of where I see agents going, it would be able to just layer and be able to do this plus a whole different ecosystem, plus a whole different ecosystem in one agent.
yeah, I think those are quite. I don't want to speak for Laura, but that kind of orchestration isn't necessarily what comes out of the box here. You
Yeah.
probably could do it, because Wordsmith has an API, so you can API into any of your workspaces too. So if you've got something like LangGraph or LangChain, you can pipe into Wordsmith, pipe answers back out, and build them together, which I think I haven't done that, but I know that that would be would open up some like capabilities for me. Uh, but yeah, it's well ahead of most other things I can get my hands on for sure.
But I will say, Laura Wordsmith, it has a lot of depth, especially with this back end. So,
Yeah, I mean, like I always tell people I'm honest. When I joined about a year ago, I was like, I don't know, right? This legal specific tool as ChatGPT or Claude could just come out and crush them. But there's so much work has gone into it, and I think a lot of it is obviously credit due to our CEO, who is both a lawyer and an engineer. One of the reasons that I chose to work at Wordsmith because I got tired of using legal tech that was not built by lawyers. And then also for in-house lawyers, right? None of us work the same. None of our teams do the things the same. So they're really trying to have you have out-of-the-box solutions for teams who may have low tech capabilities, or like, Jay's team, he has high tech capabilities. So he's wanting to do more and push us. So we're trying to have a tool that can meet people where they are. And if you've asked the question, our engineers have definitely already thought about it and discussed it. So that's why I'm like, I just have to go back and ask. Even today, I opened, there's this new button here. Like, all of a sudden you'll open the tool and be like, oh, there's something new here today. So they're building so fast that I have to keep up to date. But just to show you quickly, if you wanted to test this out, if you have access to Wordsmith, if you don't, you can always talk to me as well. So you add in a server URL. And so I was like, what can I connect to like try this out to practice? And so our CTO just said, just go to Zapier and you can do that. And so if you want to test it out, this is how you can get a Zapier MCP URL. So, you know what? I need to put there is a URL that I will put so then you can get to this page. But it brings you to this page. And what you're going to do is you're going to create a new MCP server on Zapier. And then you'll get that URL and you can connect it. So the first step is creating that server. It's really not hard. You really just hit new server and you name it. But what you need to do then, you have the server, but then what you need to do is you need to connect it to whatever tool you want. So you connect it and then you create the server. So I've got this MCP Zap test server. I've created it. I just chose another client because here you can also connect it to Claude, ChatGPT. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but I wanted to do something other because I'm going to connect it to my AI. So here you can search through thousands of tools that connect with Zapier, and then you can connect it there, then take that URL or you log in. So let's say I want Gmail. I log in to Gmail, it's there. So now I have a Zapier MCP server that connects to my Gmail. And then I take that URL and I go over to Wordsmith and put that URL there. And now I have connected those two tools together. And that is just some way that I was just, testing it. And then once you've connected them, then you can go and look at when you connect it here, that's also where then you will select, I believe, the different pieces, like all the different where we saw all that Jira um, underscore pieces of what do you want from Gmail to be collected or from Google Forms or whatever from Airtable. What do you want to have access to? And then you can, in your workspace in Wordsmith, then have your custom instructions. So at first it seemed a little overwhelming for me, but it's actually fairly easy. And then with Zapier AI, also, it's really easy. The connection for an MCP is easy to do, but if you want to also try building out Zapier workflows, um, that's also something that you can try. So I have the instructions here. It's really fairly easy to do. I know it's finishing a little bit short of time, but wanted to see if there were any additional questions or anything that anyone wanted to share also about their experiments or how they've been using these tools. Oh, yes, I see a hand.
Yes, exactly. So I was just wondering, so MCP can be used for very different scenarios, for different use cases. And the question would be, how would we, it is a connection from, let's say, one service provider or from one closed environment to another environment. And there are quite a few questions that arise connected to liability, to risks, to shifting risks. And I was just wondering if you came across, or if you have maybe already formulated some model clauses, or if you have thought about this at all, when it comes to how to split risks when so to say different systems talk to each other when instructions are given, because at some point it leaves the protection or interest sphere or risk sphere of one company and enters the risk sphere of another. And because it's something so new, it's a bit hard to draw the line, and it's also autonomous at some point, so it can do much more. The question is just about liabilities and risk and how to deal with those.
That's a good question, and I would definitely defer to our general counsel, Lucy, on that. But then also, like, if I just put on my, right, like AI provider hat, um, I want to put it all on you and how you're using it, and you need to verify,
Exactly.
because
But what
I
if
don't,
there are two use? So I don't want to push the liability to the AI provider because I know they have, by now, they should have bulletproof terms. I think all the use cases of what can go wrong are already public. So if I would be their legal, I would update the terms, and I think they
yeah.
did, which is so visible with OpenAI now because it has so many disclaimers. But let's say there are companies behind it who use the AI, and if we have them talking,
Oh, you've got, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the interest sphere of the users, so to say, of the deployers, how to, yeah, where to put the,
Because it's, like, it's
where
interesting.
the risk is shifting.
Like, if you just take this simple example again of like Wordsmith, because we're the AI in question, and Juro,
Mm-hmm.
um, we're pulling or information's going back and forth from Juro. Juro doesn't really know what's happening in Wordsmith. Um, so like they're not
Exactly.
gonna want liability
Exactly.
either. And then we Wordsmith are gonna be like, you're responsible for your
Exactly.
use case. Um, and so I think it just comes down, like you said, probably to those disclaimers, because we definitely don't
Mm-hmm.
recommend that you use our tools without any verification, because we're not there yet with
Mm-hmm.
AI. And so you need to build in human checks into
Yeah.
it, because, for
Yeah.
example, in Ellie's example, she built in checks, but she could have
Mm-hmm.
just said, do all of this without me, like just even say scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, do you want to see the proposed email that goes out to someone, or do you not want to see it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Yeah,
that's,
no. Mm-hmm. That was also my idea. Thanks a lot, dear Laura. So like the human oversight, of course, and the human triggering a specific action. So ideally, it is programmed in such a way that things don't happen by default, because that the human is always triggering like a specific action. It can be a repetitive one, but it needs to be set up and approved by a human on each side. And whoever is doing that also assumes liability. Like that would be my differentiator. That would be the divider. If information flows both way, so whoever initiates the action, even if it's a repetitive one, assumes liability, should know what they are doing, and vice versa. That the one, as you also said in your example with Wordsmith and Juro, that always the party who initiated the action and who knows what is happening assumes liability. Therefore, and in that way, it can be split, divided, or just risk can be allocated properly.
yeah, I mean, I think that's really the only way that you can, like, the actor, right, is the one who's in control.
And yeah, the control, as you said, it always needs to be humanly supervised, because otherwise it can easily, yeah, I mean, it would not be, of course, in compliance with the AI Act most likely, but it would also take the risk could not be properly assessed. But if it's just given to the yeah, to the initiator, that would be a good path forward, at least an understandable one, also something that can be communicated and disclaimed and understood also by non-legals.
Yeah, because really when we get into these workflows, and I don't know, Jay, if you've had any conversations about how you're thinking about these workflows and AI and agents and, MCP connections or
Yeah, extensively. We have the same concerns. I think for me, whenever you move towards that sort of agentic part, you just have to have extremely good prompts, to start with. It's just thinking, what would you tell a person in the same way? Like, what guardrails would you give them? What's your policy? What actions are forbidden? And then the extra guardrails around that is like you might just say, look, we're just only going to do read-only access because that's fine for the time being, and anything that's going to write data or delete data, we're not going to have that for a second, and then work your way up to it. And I think sometimes like you can also create like a staging area. So you can have that human in the loop review before you then post or delete. So I'll give you a really good example. We've got just hundreds of thousands of Notion pages now, like across the organization. We need to clean them up. It's not practical to go through them one by one. So we need to use tools like AI to find pages that need to be deleted. Now, we're not going to tell it to delete them. We're going to mark them and list them in a table and then maybe evaluate when the last update was or when it was last read or something, and then decide if it should be deleted. So giving us like a chance to triage and then execute. Like those sorts of things, just sensible. Like how do we move fast but stay safe? So,
that's a great example because oh my God, yeah, accidentally
Mhm.
deleting things.
Yeah,
It's a fear.
it is a bit fair, and obviously, I assume everybody works in law firms. So, there's things that even though we don't use them, we do need to keep them for like audit. So it's like all those things. So yeah.
Exactly.
And the only thing I would add that I would suggest is really looking at what is your company. I don't know if you're in-house firm, but looking at your company's tolerance for risk based on the industry you're in and the appetite you're willing to digest. If you're in a more highly regulated space, you may want things much tighter from a contract, due diligence, risk standpoint, as far as like straddling who controls what risks. But I think that if you're with an organization that has a larger risk appetite, you can potentially make different considerations.
Definitely. I think we definitely see, right, enterprise level companies are acting differently than say, scale ups. It's a really good point. Definitely. Any other questions or thoughts? No? Well, thank you. I really appreciate everyone for joining and also for sharing. I will send out an email probably sometime tomorrow that will include this recording, the slides, and then also some additional videos from Ellie, who was unable to join us, who would have done a much better job at showcasing it. And I believe there were 2 or 3 questions. I'll look at the transcript, of course, and use AI, pull those questions out, and also try to get those answered. And we can upload it as a document or another video. And since you registered on the Academy, I have your email addresses and we can email it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And also thank you for the thanks. If you need anything, most of you, I think, know where to find me, but just in case, you can always send me an email or you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you enjoyed this, please give a shout out on LinkedIn and let other people know. We're trying to tell people about the Academy. It's free. We're in the process of also reorganizing it to make it easier to find things. But we really would appreciate the support. So thank you so much, everyone.